Hello, and welcome to another Movie Spoiler Alerts podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Blade Runner 2049, which just came out today. And we're going to go through the story really quickly and start jumping into a little bit more of the finer points. And hopefully we can start doing these a little more frequently, and hopefully they're a little bit shorter. So we'll just jump right into it.
Okay, so the film opens in the year 2049, 30 years after the original film. We are introduced to replicant K, who is a Blade Runner working for the LAPD, who is hunting down an older generation replicant. He kills the replicant, and in a further search, he reveals a buried box. The box contains remains of a replicant who has passed during childbirth. This causes an uproar with the LAPD, who doesn't want anyone to know that replicants can have children. This also leads to the Wallace Corporation that has taken over the Tyrell Corporation to pick up on a lead for a long search for an important character in the last film, Rachel. We find that Rachel is the deceased in the box, suggesting Deckard, who is the other main character in the original, that he's the father. So Kay is ordered to hunt and kill the child, and in his search, he stumbles upon these clues that makes him believe that he might be the child. He has memories that he used to believe were only implanted that turn out to be true. He begins to believe that he's the child, and eventually the LAPD starts to question his abilities to continue. He lies to the LAPD and tells them he has killed the child. Kay continues his search for the truth and takes on the name Joe that his holographic girlfriend has given him due to the fact that he may be someone who is born deserving a name. That's what she thinks. So he tracks down Deckard, and after a brutal fight, which was pretty awesome, confirms that Deckard is the father, but that he really has no more information. So the Wallace Corporation finds both of them. They take in Deckard, and they leave Joe for dead. Joe is taken in by a group of replicants who reveal they're going to rise up against humans and also tell Joe that Rachel's child was a girl, meaning Joe is not the child. And Joe, inspired by the replicant group and realizing who the child really is, rescues Deckard and takes him to his daughter, a woman Joe went to in his search, who is a memory designer for the replicants named Anna Stelline. And the film ends with Joe dying and Deckard staring upon his child.
So we're going to kind of take a outward to inward approach. So we're going to kind of talk about the big stuff and work our way down to a little bit more of the narrow. So I guess, what did you think of the setting and the world, and also how it compared with every single one of these questions, especially because everyone's going to always be talking about it, just like they did with Star Wars, just like they do with every one of these reboots. How did it compare to the world and setting of the previous film?
I liked a lot of the things that they did. One of the things I was confused by, though, is that when he went to one of the older people that was involved somehow with Deckard, it was like a really old building and everything else was futuristic.
Yeah.
And that kind of threw me off because they talked about in this film how there was like a war and there was like this dark period. And so it just confused me why this old building would still be there, especially if it seemed like a lot of things like maybe deteriorated in that time. And how now they're like on all these different planets, like why is this building still there? But anyway, other than that, that was only a small part of the film. I really liked that they kept it with kind of, you made the point really while the film was going that, it looks a lot like the darkness in the original. And they did a good job of that, I think. So I think they kept close in that regard to the original.
Yeah, and that was something I was very concerned about, was that it was going to be too colorful.
The only time they got colorful was when they were in LA, and when you met Deckard, there was actually sunlight coming through the room. And that's because they weren't in that big city.
Well, it was Vegas, but yeah.
Oh, I said LA.
Yeah. But yeah.
Vegas.
But yeah,
sorry.
but that's what I appreciate, was that LA, and it had those giant holographic ads that they had in the original film. It had that dark appearance.
And I originally thought when it first started, she's like, the LAPD director, Madam, is that what they kept calling her?
She's
Madam?
got I think her name is actually Josie, but like as a formal title, they always refer to her.
She originally tells him at the beginning, "Come home before the storm," and so I'm like, oh, it's just one storm. They had to lead into that, but now that line makes zero sense.
Yeah.
Why was there?
Because
there was a storm all the time.
Yeah.
So.
And I really appreciated seeing like you didn't because this is some big event has happened, some wars. It's not exactly clear, but. It's when you're in LA, every single sign is English, Arabic, Chinese, Japanese. There was a good mix of things, which reminded me very much of the movie Cloud Atlas, because in the movie Cloud Atlas, you see a time in the future, and you see people speaking half English, half Chinese, and it's supposed to be like these are the two dominant languages that took over. So I appreciated. I always love the level of detail. I always love a slightly in the future film that is post-apocalyptic, or not necessarily apocalyptic, but not a utopia. And that's why just the setting of the alone in the movie got me quite excited. And so kind of going that same way with the previous film, I feel was very artsy to a degree. I mean, especially there was dream sequences. There were some things that frankly, until I sat down and read, such as with the whole reveal at the end of the first film, which you find out that Deckard is a replicant just based off of a small little piece of origami. I did not catch that connection.
And I didn't know until you told me.
Yeah. And so how did you feel that this film was as in the same style as the previous film in terms of its level of, I guess, abstractness at times?
I think you completely understood what they were talking about, if that's what you mean. They weren't like, I don't know, I felt they were like a little bit more secretive about it in the last one for sure. In this one, it's a little bit more, hey, there's this horse, and this horse means that this is blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not like, hey, this is this unicorn.
Yeah.
They're more upfront for sure about what they meant.
And which I appreciated, because I felt stupid after watching the previous film, not getting it right away. But I can understand why hardcore fans of the previous film could be upset that they felt this one was a little more pandering. So
I can definitely see a lot of pandering in this one.
Yeah. And it certainly is a long film. It's not boring, but having drank several fluid ounces of liquid, I kind of wanted the film to wrap up just so I could go pee, because I can't really pause it when I'm sitting in the middle of the theater to go to the bathroom.
You can't?
No.
You can't stand up and be like, excuse me.
Projectionist. No, that would be nice. So, I guess getting a little more narrow, the use of music in the film I thought was very interesting, because there was a lot of scenes that just had zero music, and it was just dead silent. And that was something that you don't find, at least I don't notice as often. And when you don't hear it, it sounds like deafening how quiet it is when there's no sound, no music.
I think that went along with the original, though. I don't know if they did no sound, but a lot of I don't know, I just felt like some of the music went along with the original. And
I just mean as a comparison to other films, I thought that just, it really made certain scenes stand out. Just the quietness.
Yeah, there was a lot of times when I wanted to say something to you, but I'm like, it's too quiet, everyone will hear me.
Exactly. And I had a bag of candy in my hand, and every time I touched the bag, I was like, I'm being too loud. So I thought that was interesting. Now, getting a little bit more narrow, what the characters. So let's first talk about Kay, or Joe. What did you think about him as the new protagonist?
First of all, when the movie started out, Ryan Gosling plays as Kay, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I really like him in this right now. It just seemed like there's one line that he says at the beginning, and I'm like, this is not the right role for him. This is going to be so crappy throughout the rest of this movie. And he actually I don't know if he gets into it more, or the movie amps up and he becomes more of this non-robotic character maybe. But I was really worried about Ryan Gosling's acting skills in this. I don't know why. I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen him in a sci-fi film before. Yeah. All I could think of was Crazy Stupid Love, which is a romance film. And I'm like, this is not, he's supposed to be some goofy guy. This isn't going to work out for him. And he actually really picked it up, I think, a lot. Yeah. As for the actual character, We just discussed it a little bit that he was essential to the way that the film went, but maybe not essential to the overall. Definitely not essential to the overall. I don't know if I'd say plot, but where this film is going afterwards, definitely not essential. Maybe mostly because he dies, but also we have all these original characters from the last film.
Exactly.
And they definitely turn out to be the more important ones for sure. So his character, though, I think did a good job in bringing those two worlds together. And I really liked his... I did like his romance story, especially because when they killed his holographic girlfriend, I was like, oh my gosh. You can't kill his holographic.
Exactly.
That's just how that's how they made you feel, because with his holographic girlfriend, you weren't sure if she actually did love him or if it was just something she was programmed to do. Yeah.
And which is actually, I had a little bit further down the list, but I want to talk about it now. So I think one of the things that this movie really brings up is the idea, which, I mean, anytime you have a movie with artificial intelligence, it brings it up. But the idea of what is love, because there's two big love things that we have in this series, is we have the love between Deckard and Rachel from the first film, and it is discussed actually very in depth at the end of the film with Wallace, which I'll talk about in a second. But the new love that we see is between Joe, or Kay, and his girlfriend, which, what was her name? I'm trying to remember.
I can't think of
it
either.
I believe the signs say Joy, because there's signs advertising that you can buy this girlfriend. And I'm almost positive that her name was Joy, so it's Joy and Joe. But what it brings up is what is love, not to, make a pun on the song. But because the reason is that they make several references to the fact that Joe is a consumer of Wallace's products, and his girlfriend is a Wallace product. But he seems genuinely in love.
And the reason that I really picked up on that is he buys the thing to take her around.
Exactly.
So he gets this money from basically being this bounty hunter to kill this replicant at the beginning, and he uses that money to buy her this surprise or anniversary gift, is what he kind of calls it.
And so he can always be with her, and she can always be with him. But so at the beginning of the film, I really thought that this was just every single house, because it seems at first like he's almost talking to an Alexis or Google Home. And I thought he was just kind of going through the motions. But then you started to realize, he actually genuinely loves this girl. And this girl who is just a hologram seems to love him. But what I had to think about is, if I can accept that an android can love another android or love a human being because of their artificial intelligence, why couldn't an artificial intelligence that's a hologram also love someone? But what gets brought up later in the film is with Deckard and Rachel, and that Wallace is discussing with Deckard. He's essentially trying to get out of Deckard where his child is. And he's kind of taunting him. And what he does is he actually produces a fake Rachel and has this fake Rachel approach him. And what he's saying is, did Rachel ever really love you? Or do you think that Rachel was just a plant by the Tyrell Corporation, and she was just following what she was programmed to do, just a combination of ones and zeros that would make her fall in love with you so that you guys have children, but really it was both of you just being pre-programmed. So, and that brings in the issue of free will, and that's just something that I think is...
And Deckard does say, I know it's real.
Yeah. And so
But does he? You don't know.
But does he?
And
that's what brings in kind of the whole ethical thing of free will and love, and the whole concept of artificial intelligence is, at the end of the day, are they just following a table of if, then, or, just saying, if this event happens, I'll do this or that. So, it just brings up an interesting concept is, okay, will we ever get to a day where there's artificial intelligence? Can they ever love us? Can we ever love them? Mm-hmm. Is it real or is it fake? And if it's real to us and it's real to both partners, isn't that real enough? I don't know. But I just thought that was all very interesting.
Speaking about love, what do you think of the character Love?
So Love was the assistant that was to Wallace, who kind of was acting out everything, because Wallace pretty much just stays in his high tower. And
that we know of.
Yeah. And I thought she was really good. I liked her. She definitely was a very menacing female character that just was brutal.
So she kills Ma'am or Madam.
Madam, yep.
And this guy in the theater behind us goes, "Man, that was so gangster." Start laughing. Because it was, not that it was gangster, but it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Everything that she did was like over the top. She was doing like these roundhouse kicks constantly. And
and she at one point is stealing the bones from Rachel from the LAPD's evidence locker. And this guy who works for the forensic team comes in kind of like to say something, and she just hits him right in the face, and his eyes like bulge out of his head, and he just dies instantly. But she seems she in her terms of her appearance, she looks a lot like Rachel, and she seems like she'd be a more fragile woman than what she actually turns out to be, and she's just apparently incredibly strong, which you see a hint of before she starts going on her murder spree. When a door gets jammed, she just kind of like throws the door open. Oh yeah,
I did forget about that.
But she definitely was good.
What did you think about Wallace, Jared Leto's character?
Oh, I thought the character design was interesting. He apparently was blind, but he had like a device that he could plug into these floating cameras.
Yeah, were those floating? So those are floating cameras. Mm-hmm. I figured that, but I'm like, these things are weird.
Yeah.
They're weird.
He apparently has some device that plugs into him, and he's apparently got different options, but we only saw one of the options several times, so that's what I thought was odd.
Speaking of his character, there's only really 2 scenes with him. The first scene, were you confused at all, like what was happening?
Yes, very.
So with the first scene, they bring out this girl that is like just born or whatever, and he just like cuts into her and kills her. Yeah. And he's like making this long speech. I'm like, what was this for? So then later, in the second scene that we see him in, he brings out a form of Rachel. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh, he was trying to recreate this pregnancy. Mm-hmm. Totally made more sense. And then I understood his character. I'm like, oh, okay, I can get his character.
He keeps referring to the replicants as his angels. He definitely was a very... only like almost like Bond villain-esque character in terms of going on these big like roundabout like saying like all these weird expressions for everything.
Yeah, I guess his character didn't add a lot for me to it.
I thought he looked cool, but I feel like his stuff was supposed to be deeper and more poetic than it came off to me.
Yeah.
So, and then what did you think about the return of Deckard in the film?
Really liked the fight scene that they did.
Yeah.
Especially when they bring on, like, you're in Vegas and are watching Elvis and all these other performers. Yeah. I really liked how they did, like, the spontaneous lighting and the spontaneous music. And that all of a sudden, and very Harrison Ford style, Harrison Ford, his character Deckard, just stops and goes, I like this song. Like, they just stop fighting. He goes, I like this song. You want to go get a drink at the bar instead of doing this. Yeah. So I felt like that's just a Harrison Ford thing. Very much so. And he played a very good older character. Yeah. I mean, I loved that he was sitting at the bar, like, just glaring at him like, I hate you, but I don't really want to keep punching you in the face over and over again. So. Yeah, but I think at that time he didn't really hate him. I think he was just like, why are you here? Especially because he's been trying to hide for so long. I liked his character. He didn't have a super important role either. Mm-hmm. The really important role that we do get to, I think, at least if they carry this on into another one, is the group of replicants who are going to revolt against humans. That seems like the biggest... Yeah. To continue on, anyway. Yeah. Barely see them, but if they do take it on, I think that's where they're definitely going to take it to. So I guess do you see him coming back if they do make a third film? Do you see them bringing him back for the third film? I mean, except for the fact that he's probably going to get a massive paycheck. Harrison Ford? Do you think they should bring him back? Should? How about that? How about because they probably will because he wants money. But do you think they should if you were to be the designer of this story? I don't really know where he'd fall into it. And that's how I feel. He would only really act as the father to this child who is obviously super important. Like, we only see the super important people for the next one for a little bit. It was a very long story, and so we got everything out of the characters, I think, that we possibly can. Maybe not the Wallace Corporation, but...
Yeah, I agree. I think
we got everything, especially out of Joe, who dies. And, I mean, his girlfriend was kind of an important character, but she, like, dies.
Yeah.
So you're not really left with people who are going to advance it further. So
yeah, and I agree. I don't think they should include him because pretty much his only role was the fact that he knows where the child is, or at least he had an idea where the child. He
just knew that someone had placed her somewhere,
and that was why.
So let me. I don't mean to stop you, but how did she get to that point? How did this replicant child get to that point where she's working on replicants?
Which I don't know. Apparently, what they had said.
So
they did.
This is...
I think they did say that while you were gone.
Oh, I went to the bathroom.
Yeah,
I couldn't wait the 2.5 hours.
So what it was is that her parents were just about to leave. What she remembers is that her parents were just about to leave Earth, and just as they were about to leave Earth, because there's a lot of other planets, and Earth is the shittiest one right now. So everybody wants to get off Earth. But her parents were just about to leave, but she developed some... She, as far as she knows, she developed some immune deficiency, so she has to stay locked in this room where she's able of creating memories. So the idea was that she could create memories for herself, so she could make these new experiences. And from that parlayed into her actually being able to create memories for replicants. And primarily, she works for the Wallace Corporation.
So, see, this is my theory. I think that whoever the lady was for the replicant group that's going to revolt, I think somehow she got her into that position where she can implant her memories into these other replicants, making them believe this is a real memory. Where did this come from? Especially like Joe, to eventually lead to a point where someone was able to find the child, so that they could start this revolt, so that they could maybe get up to the point where there could be enough replicants to revolt, and to keep her safe, especially if she's within the Wallace Corporation. I don't know. That's just one theory. Because there was a point where one of the prostitutes, the prostitute, is at his house, sees the horse and goes, it came from the tree. And that's the point where you realize, all these other people have these memories too. So he's possibly not the child, but where is this coming from?
Yeah, and see that line you heard correctly, I heard totally wrong.
Yeah.
I heard it as it came from a tree.
Oh.
Because he has this wooden figure ends up leading him to Deckard, and the character says it was from the tree, which it's because she has the same memory that
or a similar, or very
not
necessarily the same one, because he doesn't have that memory of it coming from a tree.
Oh,
so she could have a memory.
Yeah.
This came from, I don't know. We don't know.
Yeah. But I definitely heard it incorrectly,
so,
and that makes it much more
a point that you pointed out that I kind of like, but it's probably not true, is that this horse figurine has like a little notch in its forehead, and Ben goes, it could have been a unicorn horn there, and like you're really carrying on the unicorn theme.
Yeah. And so we're also being joined by our dog tonight, who's barking like crazy, so hopefully he'll stop in a minute, otherwise we're going to have to briefly pause to quiet him. But, so I guess the next thing is the idea, so what do you think of the idea of pregnancy? Because that is definitely a big left turn in the series from the previous film. It's definitely a big jump. Do you think it is a logical jump, or do you think it's almost a jumping of the shark?
It definitely seems like the Wallace Corporation has been moving towards this, and especially because they want to replicate it. So what the Wallace Corporation's motives are, I'm not really sure on why they would want to start this. I'm not really sure what their motives are, but I don't think it's a big jump the shark or anything. I just think that's where they want to move the story to.
Yeah, and I think logically it makes sense in terms of if you've created this. Maybe it wouldn't be the method I would take if I ran the Tyrell Corporation, but I see what you're saying. But if you were to create something that you really want it to truly be alive, then you want it to also be able to create stuff on its own, including new life. so that almost you're viewing it as the next evolution of man, is because the next evolution of man, maybe in their eyes, is not humans growing a third arm. It's us creating something new that will just entirely replace us. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's the direction that they were thinking with
like
the
a super evil plan. Like, we're just going to take over humans.
Well, not to take over humans, but just to over time replace them.
Okay.
So
same diff.
Yeah, but so I guess with all that, I guess
So is that a direction that you thought the movie was going to take, though?
No, I didn't think that at all.
I guess I didn't have any thoughts.
I thought what it was going to be is that the direction I thought this movie was going to go is Kay was going to kill some guy, and then he goes to kill the next guy, and it is Harrison Ford as Deckard, and they go on this big adventure shooting shit for the rest of the movie. That's exactly what I thought was going to happen. I thought this movie was going to be a big action exploding movie and not really down to the sci-fi, what if this scenario would happen, what would you do? Which I was very glad it did that, because I was worried that it was going to be so different. Was there a point where you thought that Ford characters and Gosling's character were just going to die and they were just going to carry on from there? Maybe not, but I kind of felt like, okay, we're seeing this other replicant group. Mm-hmm. Like, they could die. Like we just said, they weren't extremely important to the next thing. Mm-hmm. So I was expecting them to die. I expected the opposite of what happened to happen. I expected Deckard to die and Joe to live, so that he could be in the next film. Oh, okay. Because I feel like everything that happens now is what's going to happen in the next film. So I guess, do you think there will be, but do you think there should be a next film? I'm sure there will be because of money, but do you think there should be a next film? Do you think we could end the story here and that... Obviously, no. They've set it up to have a next film. Like, now you can't. Now you have this like, mysterious group that's, like, building up to being able to revolt, and now you have this child who's supposed to be, like, the messiah for them. You gotta go somewhere with it now. Now that you've done that. You could just end it, but that'd be ridiculous. Yeah. Especially the original did not end this way at all. No. So they're building it up to some type of series. Yeah, and that one definitely... The first one definitely ended. Do you think it's going to be like Blade Runner 2069? Maybe not that far out. Yeah, but do you think it'll be named like that? That would be silly. But, sorry. I mean, it's a Ridley Scott film, so his movie, his series was Alien, so it was Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection. They're so randomly numbered, so it could be named anything. But I guess... The other thing is comparing 80s sci-fi films, so especially the original Blade Runner, to just general sci-fi movies that we see now, I guess, do you feel like you notice any difference between In my opinion, I think the 80s ones are goofier. Which I can wholeheartedly agree on. And this one, before even seeing the film, though, I had seen something that this film was trying really hard to be a sci-fi film, but didn't really reach that. I thought it did. There was a couple scenes in the end where, like you said, like pandering to an audience for sure, that just felt very cookie cutter for a film. But I think they got a couple of good sci-fi moments in there. Yeah. And another thing that I had read too is that, if you're going to see the film, definitely see it and see it in theaters. And I think that was a good point too, because there was definitely moments where they like made the theater shake at important. They did a good job with all the music, and they did a good job with making you feel like you were a little bit in the movie. And so I think overall, it was a good movie. And it met sci-fi requirements. Yeah. Maybe not as goofy. I don't know. That's just how I feel. I think they're a little goofy. Yeah. So I think it definitely brought it up to a modern sci-fi. Yeah. And that's exactly how I feel. I feel 80s, and maybe it's just because I didn't grow up during that time and I'm used to the more modern sci-fi films, but I find a lot of older sci-fi films can be a little bit more niche-y, and they feel like they were a little more campy in terms of, like, you got to know more of the background information, not that you're going to get it from just watching the film. Yeah, and that's where that pandering comes in. Yeah, and it does, and, it makes the film a little bit less intelligent, but it makes it a little bit more able to be appreciated. Like I said, the first time I watched Blade Runner, I didn't understand it, and I felt stupid. And then after understanding it, I appreciate it.
I was going to say, so you appreciate the pandering.
A little
to
bit,
make you feel more intelligent.
Yeah.
That's why they do it, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, like in the first Blade Runner, personally, I think that I read a review that I completely agree with. The beginning of the film is good. The end of the film is good. The middle of the film is... And that's how I feel. I feel that sometimes the stories take a little longer in these 80s films, and they don't really go anywhere. Like I've been rewatching the original Mad Max films, and the beginnings are good, the end's good, the middle is a little out there. So I don't mind a little bit of the more modern stuff, but I definitely can see why people would be upset about the pandering.
What would you rate it?
So right now I'm probably on the fence, but I would say probably a 7 or an 8. I definitely want to rewatch the film. I definitely liked it a lot. I definitely think it raises interesting questions, and so for me it's definitely between a 7 and an 8.
How does the ranking go again? What's
10 7,
is totally ninja.
10 is totally
9
ninja. 9 is I think it's amazing. I'd have to look at it, but essentially okay, what it is 7 and up means you intentionally are going to watch the film again.
I would intentionally watch it again. I did like it. I'd probably have to go with an 8. It was pretty good. It was long.
It was long.
But it wasn't ever boring.
No.
It did keep you interested. There were very good parts in it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say an 8.
Yeah, and the more I gotta stew on it a little more, but like I said, especially when we talk about these films, I definitely find the elements I do really appreciate. And like I said, I think the idea, I always love things that make you think the next day. And I think definitely the idea of love and free will that they brought up with just the series in total, I think will probably push it to an 8 for me. So... all right, I think that's about everything. So thank you for watching, and like I said, hopefully we'll have a few more of these out soon, and a couple of other tech podcasts, and make sure to check out our other videos. And if you haven't seen the original film and you want a spoiler, I feel like you've wasted your time watching this whole podcast, but we do have a short review that you can watch, as well as our other videos, and thanks for watching.
Thank you. See you next time.